Hello, my name's Alicia. Welcome to our Golden Acre. Our Golden Acre is our place that we live. We live on 1 acre right now, and we've got a garden that's about 700 square feet of planting space. We've got 5 maple trees that we make wonderful maple syrup in the late winter and early spring. We have 8 chickens that give us eggs and improve our lawn and make compost for us. And this morning I'm harvesting beans. I found myself in a place this morning where I felt like sharing. I wanted to share what I was doing, but I also didn't want the noise and the distraction of trying to explain and all of that. So I just set up the camera and I harvested. This morning we're harvesting our black beans. So I'm just taking my time. I'm noticing the birds and the different plants. This particular bed doesn't produce as well as some of the others in the garden, but it's closest to our fence, which is closest to one of our maple trees. And so I do believe there's competition there between for shade and for water and those kind of things. But this morning's just a quiet morning. I don't have any music playing. I'm just harvesting. And I thought you'd like to join me. I'm not doing any time lapse. I'm not speeding things up. This is the speed of the morning. This is what we're doing. This space I'm preparing for a fall garden. So it's time for the things that aren't going to be able to tolerate the cold to be harvested. And our black beans are ready. I love growing dried beans just because the processing is very simple. Right now, I'm just going to cut them, I'm going to bundle them, and I'm going to tie them on our front patio under the roof, and they're going to just sit and dry, and I think they're beautiful. They're a fantastic decoration for our front patio with our garlic and our onions and just the simple colors and textures of things that grow in the garden make me happy to see when I walk up on my front patio. So there's multiple places in our garden where we grow beans. These are save seeds. We've been growing black beans now, I think, for 3 years. And I just enjoy the process. I enjoy thinking about when I planted them, watching them grow, and now the harvest. And these are the beans that will feed us through the winter, and also the beans that will go back in our garden in the spring and grow more food for us as we move forward. And again, I just like the observation. These plants are not as happy and healthy as ones that are in other parts of our garden, but it's still producing us food. So this area needs some more compost. That's our next step. And then we're going to plant. We're going to plant more food for us to grow into the fall. It's a morning that's really hot. We've been very dry in this area. Thankfully, we're not in drought, but it's really hot and it's really dry. Thankfully, shortly after I filmed this portion, we did get a rain shower, so I'm very thankful for that. A little bit of rain on our garden. There's nothing like true rain. You can water your garden all that you want, but it's not the same. So now I'll move into another part of the garden. Now right here, you'll notice my coffee that's often present. That mug makes me happy. It's the color blue that my grandma had. And I think of that often, especially when I'm out in the garden in the quiet. That's the color blue my grandma loved, and it makes me happy to have it in my house and in my hand and in my garden. So this is the main part of our garden, well, the original part of our garden when we first moved into our home, and it's expanded from there. You'll notice these plants are much darker green and much bigger, and there's a lot more vegetable, a lot more beans on these. Now, for anybody that hasn't grown dried beans before, a dried bean just looks like a string bean. Now, provided you probably choose a specific kind because of the flavor that that has, but it just grows in a pod just like a string bean does. And you let the bean fully develop on the plant, and then you let it dry. Now, I don't know how long it needs to dry exactly. I just know when the pod is full and starting to dry and I need the space, I just cut the plants and I hang them and I let them continue to dry. And this is the wonderful part about these, opposed to cucumbers and zucchini and tomatoes, that if you harvest them, you're going to need to eat them or preserve them in a fairly short time frame. With these are going to hang on my front patio for a long time, probably into fall, into the start of the school year, into the cooler weather. And as I get time, I'll go out and pull the beans off, bring them inside, and it's just a wonderful thing to do in the evenings when it's cool, after dinner, maybe when the TV's on, to just sit with the bowl on my lap and shell the beans and see how much produce or how much food we got from the space. Last year we didn't buy any beans. All the beans we consumed through the winter, the fall, the winter, and the spring. Actually into summer we still have some left, were from beans that we grew. These are black beans. You'll notice all the way at the back of the garden, that wall of green is another kind of bean. They take longer to develop, but last year we grew 10 pounds of those beans. So that's going to be adding to our winter food for next year. There's something truly wonderful about just the work of the garden, just the repetition of movement and using your hands and just being present where you are and observing what's going on around you, under your feet, in the soil, on the plants, in the air. I think this is the farm girl in me. I grew up around farming. I like to be outside. I like to observe nature, and I like to find ways to work with it. Now, last year when I harvested the beans, there was a lot of bug damage. There was a lot of larvae that I found. I forget the type. It was a bean beetle, but I forget it was a specific kind that I found. I found a lot of larvae. I found a lot of eggs and that kind of thing. So when I was doing this portion, I harvested like this, but then I also cut all the leaves off and took them to the chickens to try to cut down on the amount of beans or beetles that were affecting the plants. Now I don't know if that was what helped. I also have a video posted on kind of managing the pests through drawing in your beneficials. So I don't know if the things that we did along those lines made a difference. I don't know. But I definitely have healthier plants this year. Now these beans are really small. Now I planted them right next to the corn. So again, this bed is over next to the fence. There's a big maple tree inside the fence. Its branches come over this bed. And if the branches come over this bed, then the roots are under it as well. So I think there's a lot of competition, like I said, for light and also for the nutrients in the soil. But it still produces. There's still beans that I'm going to harvest from this that will continue on either for our food or to go back in the soil for next year. So next is harvesting our corn stalks. This is a mini kind of corn. The ears would kind of just either fit across the palm of your hand or from the palm to your fingertip. They're not a very big ear of corn, but this works well for a smaller garden. These are again saved seeds. I purchased this seed a few years ago from Baker Creek, and I allowed some of the stalks to finish and harvested the dried kernels, and they germinated beautifully. I don't think a single one of the seeds that I planted did not germinate. Now the timing was a little bit off. We were on vacation when most of this corn was fresh and ready to eat. We did get to eat some of it, but a lot of these stalks still have ears of corn on them. I'm going to pull those to feed to our chickens, probably for the winter, just something to add to their feed that we purchase, something to give them something to do when they're in their stationary coop and not being moved around our backyard and grazing. These will also be our fall decorations. As I'm cutting them, I'm bundling them to put on our front patio for our fall decorations. And then when we're done with the fall decorations, they'll go in our chicken run as part of our deep bedding that our chickens will scratch and peck at and walk over, and they're going to go back into our compost and then top our garden beds and complete that circle. Now, as I'm working here, I'm thinking, years ago, again, I grew up around farming. I grew up watching a lot of work on equipment and observing the use of tools and how you complete a task. And I remember once I was watching two mechanics working. They were changing my tires, taking the old tires off the rim and replacing them with new ones. I don't remember if it was for the winter, whatever the task was. I was watching because it was really neat watching them use the equipment. But one of the mechanics was working fast and throwing the tools and breathing hard and just like rushing. And the other gentleman was just kind of moving slowly and purposefully and kind of humming to himself or whistling while he was working. And observing those two people, they were getting the work done at the same speed. One looked like he was working a lot faster, but the task was being completed at the same rate. So I'm kind of thinking of that as I'm just working methodically through this task of cutting the stalks and stacking them. That thought came to mind. I can still picture those two gentlemen often, and I think of that when I try to rush through a task and end up either messing it up because I'm trying to go too quickly and not paying attention. I use that memory as a lesson of just sometimes just do the task. Don't try to rush. Don't try to make time go away too quickly or the task go away too quickly. Just do the task that's in front of you. And that's what we're doing this morning. It is amazing to me when I throw all these corn stalks in the chicken run in the winter, and you just think, how is that possibly going to be broken down to put on the garden beds, and how long is that going to take? And it is amazing how quickly it can happen, especially with the chickens' help. Right now we've got a beautiful pile of compost that is ready to start topping garden beds, and it was hay and leaves and corn stalks and all of our food waste through the winter. And right now it's just beautiful black dirt that's ready to go back on our garden beds. So I'm thinking of that as I'm working. Now you'll notice that I'm cutting these plants off and leaving the base and the roots in the soil. I do no-till gardening, where I may just like break the surface of the soil using a garden weasel. It's just like a tool that looks like ninja stars, that will just kind of rough the soil so that I'm able to loosen it to plant seeds, or I just dig a hole enough to put a new plant in. but I'm allowing the soil structure to stay as it is. I'm allowing those roots and the base of the stalk to break down into the soil and add back into it and just stay where they are. I have observed as I've done this, the soil, the plants, my production has done nothing but get better. And there's a few stalks that you see that I didn't cut. Those are ones that I'm leaving. I'm leaving those because they have a nice sized ear on them, and I want them to fully dry and complete on the plant in the soil. Those are the ones that I will save the seed from for next year's garden. And thank you for joining me today in my morning of quiet contemplation in the garden. I hope you join us for other videos, and I hope you take the time to be outside or the place that brings you peace and a place to bring perspective. Thank you so much for joining me today.